Hello there, and welcome to episode 23 of the Not So Casual Gamer podcast. My name's Sam Christensen, and joining me, as always, is Lewis Cunningham. Lewis, how are you?
Hello. Can't remember the last time we did an evening one.
It was last time.
Did we?
It was, yes, because it was just that late night one that we had to do. But
it just feels really odd to be in here at night.
At night.
Yes.
We're only 30 seconds in, and we've been able to squeeze a SpongeBob reference in there. Mm-hmm. A reference. Reference. Anyway, yes. Welcome to episode 23. Like we said at the top, we are going to be what's the word? Just doing away with the niceties and what we've been playing, for not much has changed since last episode. So if you have such a burning desire to know what games we are playing, and I can understand why, it's riveting stuff, you can go back and listen to that one, because not much has changed. Our opinions have remained the same.
But we do live underwater.
Huh?
Ah, that was terrible. But
was that a reference to the year 3000, the song?
Because you said not much
has changed, right? Okay, cool. Yeah, I got it.
I actually wish I hadn't. I take that back. That's not good at all. Forget I ever said that, anybody.
It's staying in, as everything will.
God damn it.
Be careful what you say around me, for I will not edit it out.
Well.
Oh, I might edit that out.
Oh, what's happening?
Swallowed wrong. Anyway.
Don't do that.
Yeah, okay.
Swalla-la-la.
Swalla-la. This is going to the dogs.
It's what the people want.
It's what the people want. Write in. Send us a letter to our P.O. box.
Oh, I thought it was pronounced Po-box.
Po-box. All right, we really need to just make a start here. So we're going to jump straight into the episode today. So as you can tell by the title, I'm thinking of calling this one. Here's me thinking of the title during the recording of the episode, Inception.
That's good.
But Assassin's Creed, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's not what I was expecting.
Okay. Cool. It's not, so clearly not good.
Well, I mean, I don't know if somebody would think you're trying to make a reference to that
the spaghetti western
somehow. That's our hope for Assassin's Creed Infinity, is that it's based in that time.
That it's a cowboy film. Anyway, that's my working title. If it's different when you see it on the podcast services, it means that I did not run with it. There you go.
Even more fun.
Past Sam and future Sam are at odds with each other. Anywho, so the plan today is we're putting our definitive Assassin's Creed opinions down on digital voice-based paper, as it were, so that we never need to talk about Assassin's Creed ever again until another Assassin's Creed comes out.
Which will be, presumably,
a live service game. Anyway, we'll get to that. We'll talk about the future.
Dear.
We'll get to that at the end. Effectively, what the plan for today's episode is that we are just going to go game by game. Core game. Not going to go for spin-offs or anything like that. Sorry, Liberations. You're not getting talked about this episode.
So, I assume that you're not including Rogue either.
Slightly including Rogue.
Because I did play.
You did.
Half of Rogue.
I'm including Rogue. I've not played it. But I'm including it as part of the lineage because it's quite an interesting one when we come to talk about that versus Unity a little bit. So, and kind of a very odd existence of Assassin's Creed at that time. So it's quite interesting. So, we're going to go game by game. I'm going to sort of just introduce each game. We're not going to go into spoiler territory for anyone that hasn't played some of these and things like that. I mean, the story's relatively simple at its core. It's more just the experience of it that kind of stands out. We'll be talking about the sort of annualisation of the franchise, talking about the innovations, the small innovations that they incrementally made, episode to episode, game to game is the word I'm kind of looking for. So let's just jump straight into it with Assassin's Creed. Bet you didn't see that coming. The first one. Let's go a wee bit of history on it here. Released in 2007 on the PS3 and Xbox 360. It was set during the Third Crusade in the Holy Land in 1191. 1191. Follows the events of Altair on his task to assassinate Templars and I've written in brackets here, get used to that storyline, because it's all of them. That's it. Fighting over pieces of Eden left over by a race of precursors. Ooh, sci-fi. So, obviously the sort of big selling point of this was it's sort of open world and parkour systems. I'm just thinking about when I first saw it. My brother had it on PS3.
Yeah, the USPs of the game.
Yeah, at the time, because that, I mean, open world games. It's not that they didn't exist, but this was the generation, the PS3 generation, Xbox 360, that really allowed those worlds to become bigger and more realized. And
this definitely felt like one of the ones at the time that was a sort of coming of age party.
Yes, definitely. It had it's got this. It felt next gen for the time. Definitely,
it wasn't even fully open world, really. It was semi-open world.
It was semi-open world, but I think, absolutely, 100% it was. But an interesting sort of felt new. Was that there? I just remember playing. I mean, I would have played it. Not allowed to fully play it because it was my brother's PlayStation kind of thing. But I was able to get my time in with it and
dabble
and loved it. And I remember thinking it was. Which is obvious, like, stupid kid wouldn't have realised this. But I'm like, this is just like Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
But new. And
well, I think that it was originally conceived to be the
a Prince of Persia game.
One, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's kind of obviously where its DNA comes from, the parkour system and the assassinations and things like that. What are your earliest memories? When did you play Assassin's Creed 1?
Yeah, so I quite distinctly remember when it came out. It was such a polarizing game at the time.
Interesting. I'd say that I was so not clued into the sort of
zeitgeist
of it at the time. So
obviously, 2007, it was such a busy year.
Yes.
It was just popping off.
It was famously popping off.
And I was just of an age where, I was completely and utterly, by, early mid 2007, I was just knee deep in games.
Knee deep in games.
Yeah. I just got fully on board. I had my breakthrough moment of playing through Gears of War 1.
Right, okay.
In like the very early...
Which was 2007 as well, wasn't it?
6,
okay, yeah.
But, first couple of months of that year, playing through that really kind of like opened the floodgates. I've said this before, but it opened the floodgates for getting into mature games and actually, taking my gaming career seriously instead of not just playing, the usual Tony Hawk's, PES, FIFA, whatever. So by the time that came out, me and my sort of group of pals at the time in high school, we were obviously just aware of everything that was coming out and going on and getting in the magazines and stuff. And I just remember the critical reaction to it at the time was polarizing. I mean, I remember some magazines, publications giving it like 4s and 5s.
Oh, wow.
Because I think it was just... It was easy to... I mean, I think because it presented something quite different at the time for a big budget game, it was easy to get hung up on the sort of strange flaws that were in that game. So obviously the main one that everyone always talks about is it being repetitive, and the actual game structure. Because, of course, all you're doing in one is working towards the boss battles, which are all kind of the same. It's like, this is his little base here. Okay, that's done. Move to the next one. Which is, I think back fondly on it because I just remember at the time it was such a kind of wondrous landscape to kind of roam around in, and those bustling streets felt so alive and so authentic to that time period.
I think that's. I'm sorry, I wasn't. Not that listeners can hear. I wasn't rudely just looking at my phone. I was having a wee look to see what the Metacritic was. It's at an 80. It's not to say that obviously that
No, I mean, I think
it was higher and lower, and not say that's not polarizing. Of course, 80 is a good score overall. But
no, it was definitely only some.
Of course, but there was this sort of. It was different.
It was generally positive, and I think around that 80 mark is probably about right.
Yeah,
because that main flaw that I just spoke about, and then
because I remember that was the thing was that it was repetitive, quote unquote. You were going to this new area, you were listening into informants, you were
all the kind of mechanics that were, it was rinse repeat.
Yeah,
but it was obviously very engaging though to
course.
do those things. It was
Yes.
like, oh wow, this is kind of stealthy, but not really. It does it in a way you don't expect in terms of blending in and you know, tailing and all the rest of it up in the. It was all about height, really.
Of course,
it introduced this idea of realistic verticality gaming.
Yep.
I guess.
I remember when I played, I was always, you know, all I wanted to do. I mean, keep in mind 2007, so I'm 11. So all I want to do is just do the parkour and run across the rooftops. Not obviously realizing that it's really just a case of holding one button and running forward, and it's quite automatic.
Well, it was quite an unusual control scheme, really.
It was. So, but I always remember that's all I wanted to do, and I was always annoyed that there were so many guards posted up on the roofs that you're like, no, get down from there, kind of thing. You're like, I just want to run across the roof.
Yeah,
you know?
that was the challenge.
Which is obviously something that they kind of changed come to a little bit. You know, there was, you know, we'll talk about 2, obviously. You know, we're going to talk about them all, but you know, that's something that they really changed, where you only really put guards on the roof of like restricted areas and stuff. So you really felt like you could, if you just wanted to relax and just run about the rooftops and not really have any fear of people, you know.
Yeah.
Although you still got the great dialogue on the ground of like, oh, he's a madman. Oh, well, you know, like. Just
I seem to remember, like, even then, you know, them just trying to cram everything they could into the game in the best way that they could. So those sound bites were like really terrible quality as well.
Yes.
Quite an odd sensation to. I can hear it in my head so clearly.
I'd love to go back and play it. Have you picked up on backwards compat on the Xbox?
No.
Typically, sort of jumps down to like £3. I think the next time I see it there, I'm just going to buy it.
I would like to play it again. I mean, ideally, I want them to actually remake it. It's one of my great desires. I mean, I know that obviously the hang-ups with it would kind of maybe not be the best idea, but I feel like they could redo it in a way that makes it more appropriate for the modern times. Somehow make it less repetitive.
I wonder if they're gonna get around that by. I suppose this is kind of coming onto the conversation that we'll finish the episode with you know, with where is it kind of going from here with the live service model that they're exploring. But there might be a way to, you know, because by today's Assassin's Creed standards, the main campaign of AC1 is quite pithy in comparison. You know, in terms of like, you know, purely hours spent playing. So I wonder if
what you even get up to.
Exactly. So I wonder if it's going to be just like the small little Damascus section of the live service game. You know,
they somehow almost like that kind of holistic Hitman engine thing where you can play previous stuff in it. They've actually kind of built it into the new engine somehow. That'd be cool.
It would be quite cool. I mean, these are the things we can talk about come the end of it. So, you know, Assassin's Creed 1 obviously is our jumping off point. You know, no pun intended with how many jumping off points there are in Assassin's Creed games. But, you know, introduced us to series staples of the, you know, the leap of faith into the hay bale, the idea of that Ubisoft climb up to the top of the viewpoint and reveal sections of maps, love it or hate it. You know, odd side quests here and there, you know, special armor to unlock and, you know, things like that, you know, for end game stuff. But at the end of the day, it was really just a story-based game. You were one and done, and that was it. Now, I must also say, there's a whole other section to these games outside of the Animus that, you know, the game is taking place, for anyone that doesn't know, in like a virtual reality kind of thing-ish.
And it was one of the other controversial things about it at the time, because I think it did make the pacing of the first game quite odd.
You were regularly sort of taken out of the action, as it were, to play as Desmond Miles. So I think I'm not really going to touch on the outside the Animus stuff. It's not what we were really playing it for. There's a story there. Of course there is, but again, we're not really going into story. I really want to talk about like the gameplay, the functions that get added, and really we can't talk about the outside the Animus stuff without really going into spoiler territory from a lot of these games and things like that. So we're not going to worry too much about that. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
we'll do that for each of the games. Have you got any more to say about AC1? We'll be referring back and things. Well, I mean,
I think at this point, after everything that's come after, I mean, I do have has a fond place in my heart,
Yes.
but I know that a lot of that will be nostalgia,
Of course.
for just how unique of a thing it was at the time. And really, I just think its standouts were the character of the world. It was.
Yeah, because Altair was quite blank slate in comparison to some of the protagonists we're going to be seeing. I think that was done on purpose, so it was not to
the main character was definitely the setting, and then really just the parkour element through running through that setting. That was the first game, really.
Yeah, exactly. That's if you think back to your time playing that is the standout. That. So. But a lot of iconography, that has been synonymous with the series, really they got right from day one, which is really interesting to see.
Yeah, there's some iconic things.
Just that they've influenced other games in the series, and other games outside of Ubisoft games have been influenced by it for sure. It's definitely a good jumping off point.
Very influential.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That moves us on to Assassin's Creed 2. Is our take from that. General whoopery, whoopery. So this was released in 2009. Now this is the first and relatively not only time now, but for a long time this was the only gap in the annual release format of Assassin's Creed. To its benefit in this sense, and then to its detriment later on as it goes on.
Yeah.
In that kind of fall of Assassin's Creed with that annualization.
Yeah.
Released on 2009 on the same consoles. The only time it wasn't annualized, like I've said here, follows the events of Ezio Auditore. Get used to him, because we're going to be seeing him. Da Firenze, because he is from
Florence.
Of Florence. Ezio Auditore da Firenze, who will be our protagonist for the next 3 games. So get used to him. They definitely made a very obvious change in, we're going to make a likable main protagonist who you're going to be spending all this time with. It's not going to be that blank slate like Altair was. It's going to be a lot more involved in, might I say, like a lot more cinematic. You think about every real kind of cutscene in the first one, it's actually kind of more in-game. It's all in engine, of course, but it's it's all kind of in-game camera, kind of locked dialogue-y bits and stuff. So it was never
quite just static exposition.
Absolutely, great way to put it. Whereas this is a lot more involved with cutscenes and more big set pieces and memorable moments. That this just felt like the first game, just on absolute steroids. Like they'd really nailed the simplistic combat that obviously was. Now, 2000. When did Arkham Asylum come out? Was that 2009?
2009, yeah.
So both games. So now, obviously, and the only comparison we're kind of making is a similar kind of melee combat system.
What's that? Is that way where it's like you're surrounded by a group of enemies, and it's this sort of very standoffish situation, where they each take turns.
Which is funny by today's standard, but at the time it felt, you felt that you were in control. You felt that you were.
It was a really addictive way to do it, because it's like, right, timing. Here it comes. Dodge. Hey, do your move.
And you do your and the cool cinematics of the counter attacks and things.
It was really satisfying animation, and the way they timed it, and they definitely really refined it from the first game.
Yeah.
It was really basic in the first game, and they just added some good stuff to it.
Definitely. So that, as the name of Ezio Auditore da Firenze suggests, so this is set during Renaissance Italy. I'm including some timelines here, actually, just so we can get an idea as to how the series kind of innovated, mainly with the technologies that the jump in time allowed. Guns come into it and things like that. So this was 1476 to 1499, and this was no, it's not. That's, I was about to say it's the last one that's centered around different locations, but it's actually not. This was Florence and Venice were your 2 main big hubs. And there was a couple of other places, Monteriggioni, which is the sort of the housing village, the estate that your family have owned, and a couple of notes before we talk of our own experience with it. Many consider this the start of the greatness from that series, as we spoke about. It was a bit more polarizing with the first game, and then the second game really brought on a lot of more universal acclaim.
Yes,
with that there. Improved tons of the aspects that bogged the first game down. Bit more cinematic, like we said at the beginning, extremely likable protagonist, all these things. So in terms of gameplay additions, we touched on the fact that it was a bit more forgiving for exploring the world and not getting bogged down by kind of pretty much getting chased by guards every single step of the way. It was a lot more forgiving in that sense.
Better balanced up high.
Yes, it encouraged you to use the verticality, I think, more than the first one did. I think there was times in my playthrough of the first one that I would kind of be like, I'd want to go up high, but I'm just going to get chased off of it and it's just going to cause more bother and things like that. Introduced quite a nice cast of of likable characters as well. You've got Mario, which is still my least favorite line in the whole of video games ever.
If you know, you know.
You should know so much. I think we've said it on the podcast as well. I don't know why I hate it so much. I should just go like, that's funny, but I don't know. I hate it.
I remember it being in the advert.
Oh, was it?
On TV and before it came out and being like, there's a thing.
I know that from video games. There's Claudia. Salute Claudia. Salute. Would you like to take a look at the books?
Of course, that was the next game, wasn't it? Really?
No, that was 2.
Was it 2?
That was 2.
Oh,
because it's building up Monteriggioni, which is the one of the things I put down here. Is becomes not a series staple certainly, but a kind of side objective that sort of helped beef out your playthrough. It gave you a bit more to work for than the first game. Was the building of your home. You made passive income from there. Allowed you to buy the finest swords and weaponry and upgrade your armor to the best it could be and things like that.
They really did add in quite a bit more to it.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember that was definitely a noticeable difference of finishing the story from 2. Finishing the story from 1, you then just turn the game off and then that's you.
Don't think it even allowed you to.
I don't
going,
did
know.
It?
I can't remember.
I think it probably would have. I think that anyway. I'd be guessing it either way. But this was the first one where I'm like, no, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna finish off the house for no real reason. I wasn't getting much. I was doing it throughout the game, but I wasn't really getting the benefit of it in the end game, quote unquote. But also, I must add at this point in time, really, I played 2 in 2012, which actually I realise isn't that long after it came out in the grand scheme of things, only 3 years. But that was when I got my PS3 after my aforementioned gaming hiatus, that I've mentioned in the podcast before. But I bought all of the Assassin's Creeds at once.
You went all in.
I just bought them all. It was up till Black Flag. Black Flag was the newest one at the time.
Yeah.
And I bought them all.
2012? It would have been 3, right?
3 was, and Black Flag was
2013.
Was the next, it must have been 2013. No, it was 2013. I do apologize. Sorry, it was 2013 that because I got my PlayStation on New Year's Eve 2012.
Right.
So that it would have been absolutely. So it was, if it wasn't out already, it was coming out. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But it was Black Flag that I was like itching to get to, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I played them. I played effectively 1 through 4 back to back, and of course that's not just 4 games. That doesn't includes the next few that we're going to talk about. And it was just such a noticeable jump going from 1 to 2. It was
totally.
I mean, definitely I remember when Watch Dogs came out, which people always say, it's like it's the modern day Assassin's Creed. It's not.
Is it? Fuck.
So I played the first Watch Dogs, and I didn't like it. And I remember when the second one came out, I remember even my Instagram caption was like, please pull an Assassin's Creed 2 and be good. And it was, in my opinion. I liked Watch Dogs 2 a lot. So Ubisoft just needs to learn from initial mistakes and then make a bunch more.
One step forward and 2 steps back.
But even I don't feel that the first game really did this, but this was the first game that introduced real historical figures. Your Leonardo da Vinci.
I also can't remember if the first game had it, but it was certainly prominent in it.
More prominent in the fact that you were pals with Da Vinci.
Yeah, and they really this was such a big part of what made the second one feel like it had so much more life and vibrancy to it. They added so much colour and character to. Well, again, the setting was a standout.
Yeah.
Just such a nice, varied kind of more colourful place to run around.
Yep.
It was beautiful, you know, for the time in sort of a game world. Doesn't graphically hold up anymore, but it was, you know, very, very competent at the time. And yeah, just with the characterization, I think, I mean, let's be honest, it's not like it's, you know, cinema grade stuff still.
No,
but it was still...
you had something to latch on to. You had someone to care about as a character. And
It was really a lot more fleshed out in that sense, and kept you, you know, wanting to see it through and just go to the various districts and see what was going on. And yeah, just a lot more, just a much more vibrant version of the first game because of all this.
Took everything that worked from the first game and just
so refined
gave you much more.
Yeah.
You know, refined those individual elements, but just gave you much more. Now, we're talking obviously really fondly about this one. It is one of our favourites, for sure.
Even like sound design, it's just everything was refined. Nice little, like, well, obviously you would expect it to be in the theme of, you know, Renaissance Italian music at the time, just incidental music. It was just such a good package.
Great package, yes. No, no, definitely it was
not too overwhelming. Nice balance.
Yes,
of things.
Keep that in mind. Not too overwhelming. Perfect length. I mean, what do you think? What do we think? Timing to beat AC2?
Well, I mean, I tend to think of it as these kind of games when I was playing them, and if I'm playing them these days, which is very rare. I sort of take into account, I'm going to do some side stuff on the way to my main objective, and then by the time I'm at the end of the main thing, that's me. I'm not doing anything
Exactly.
else.
Yes, I agree.
I would have said, for me, a kind of average, doing it that way kind of playthrough, 20 hours?
Absolutely. 20 hours main story.
Yeah.
Completionist, 31 hours. So keep that.
That sounds great to me.
Keep that number in your mind.
Yeah.
Completionist, 31 hours. Right. We'll move on. Because we'll come to... I'm going to bring... So that's howlongtobeat.com. If you don't use howlongtobeat.com, use it. It's great.
Love it.
It's great. I love it.
HLTB.
I just literally just type in HLTB, the name of the game, and then you get the...
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great. So from here, we're moving on to Brotherhood.
Woohoo!
Brotherhood is just called Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. It's not numbered. It is the second game in the Ezio trilogy, as we then soon... came to learn it as a trilogy, because playing 2, you probably would have assumed, until obviously the ending sets up a future game, you would have suspected that you were just moving on to a different setting, different character. But Rome is suspiciously missing from Assassin's Creed 2.
Yeah,
you could argue. You're like, right, you're doing Italy, and we're not going to Rome at all. We're not going to see the Colosseum. We're not going to.
Yeah.
And then the spoiler alert slightly, but the second game ends with you going to Rome
briefly. Yeah.
Briefly, and then the Brotherhood picks up exactly where that left off.
That's right.
Down to the cutscene, really. I think, if I remember correctly,
and it's quite cool how they did that.
Really. It is, absolutely. So that was in its own way new to Assassin's Creed players, which is nice. Released in 2010, year after, built on the same engine, direct follow up to 2, and that's fine. So this definitely felt exactly the same. In terms of feel, moment to moment,
for the most part, yeah,
moment to moment. However, my note here is this is the first time that the open world that we're in is really just in one city.
It's one focused
location.
Map. Yeah.
And that's something that we get used to going forward, and then we then start to deviate away from as the sort of scopes get bigger. But to have one location of Rome, but allowing that one location to be maybe, let's say, historically accurate. There's landmarks in all the games in the past that would have been there. Florence, and Venetian landmarks that would have existed, but this had much more of a focus on sort of accurately to a scale portraying the city, which kind of felt the most alive and most realistic. I feel anyway that any of the cities have gotten to at that point as well.
They did a very good job of zoning in on making it that way for this.
So this one here spans. So if the first game spanned from 1476 to 1499, so obviously you're sort of coming across a more mature Ezio every time. This one literally was 1500 to 1507. So the gameplay takes place in. So it's set in Rome, literally. I like how it's straight after. I like to think that the last game finished in 1499 on New Year's Eve, and then the fact that it's the next year, but it does start. I can't remember. I'd need to play the beginning of the game again to remember if it kind of starts in 1490. Not this it matters in the slightest, and then jumps forward a wee bit. But hey ho. But the biggest thing that stands out, and again, in preparation for this episode, I've not gone and played all these games again. No. So some of this is really just from memory, but really your main addition here is the Brotherhood, is the setting up. Story wise, you're setting up the Assassin's Brotherhood.
Yeah.
But with that came territory control. Taking over. Liberating areas of the city, and which again in its own way would become a series staple. Having a sort of AI controlled band of assassins that you could kind of.
Was it not a sort of tower defense thing?
No,
was that later on?
That was later, if I'm remembering.
Because unfortunately, it has been quite a while since I've played most of these games.
Brotherhood's the one that I remember enjoying a lot, but I probably remember the least.
It's strange in that way.
As I'm giving it glowing reviews, it's Kerry's favourite, for example. So she loved that game.
No, I think it actually is a lot of people's favourites because again, it sort of took the what they built with 2 and kind of refined some things. I mean, even I do remember at the time it even having a bit of a graphical update, for example. It did look better still than 2, not by much, but
yeah.
But it was the best sideways step ever.
Yeah,
they just sort of refined 2. So if 2 was almost almost of a revolution from 1, Brotherhood was just a good refinement.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, the Brotherhood stuff was probably the main.
It's the main selling point,
differentiating factor.
This sort of, you could send in assassins ahead of you and things like that.
Yeah,
you could call in. But this kind of introduced to, in my memory, a little bit more of that side mission element of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Where you could probably do the whole game without, other than probably forced tutorial missions, without really engaging in that side of things. But you kind of had this, that was where we got that sort of idea of the Ubisoft checklist game a little bit more than we had in the past. So it was definitely where Ubisoft is now in the games that they make, the open world games, is it's taken all of these games iterate. That's an obvious statement, but it's taken all these iterations that have been made and puts it together, like it or lump it, as a giant Far Cry or Assassin's Creed or Watch Dogs, and just gives you so much to do, and to a fault in some cases.
Well, yeah, I think still at this time, the side content was still made with sort of love and care in mind.
Yes,
what is there, you're drawn to. You're compelled to find. Oh yeah, the secret, because that it's within reach to get the really nice secret armor.
Yes,
you kind of know what to do. It just takes that bit of work.
Do you remember? I think it was Brotherhood. It might have been 2 as well, but I remember it for sure from Brotherhood, where there was the underground vaults.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of.
But there was some that were stealth combat based, and you had to get to the end, and it was just a sort of story mission, like a linear mission. But there was some that were all almost puzzle platformers.
Yeah,
you had to parkour the right way, and you're in big church cathedrals, and you're swinging on chandeliers and big light fixtures and
even
stuff.
almost the element of Tomb Raider-ish
Yes,
stuff.
yeah,
going on
absolutely.
there.
That's a perfect way to do it, to compare that there. That's
Which,
a really good
yeah, when you compare it still from where it's come from the first game, it's like it's just some really cool stuff going on here, which was fresh at the time.
Absolutely.
And am I right in saying that there was like a bit, they introduced like almost like vehicular stuff in this? There was set pieces.
Well, no, but
flying machine.
The flying machine, was the flying machine Brotherhood, or was that?
This is the thing. Some bits I can't remember between 2 and Brotherhood.
Because the flying machine was Da Vinci's.
Probably 2 then, yeah.
But no, but Da Vinci was in Brotherhood as well.
Right, okay.
Because he moved to Rome at the same time.
I seem to remember tank bits, weird primitive tank things as well.
Definitely between 2 or 3. So again, sorry for not being the most researched for this.
Well, yeah, it's hard. I mean, they definitely go hand in hand. 2
and Brotherhood are. I think if you're playing one, just play the other as well. I would say, because I think they're both of a very similar quality.
But it was so hard to kind of shake a stick at when Brotherhood did come out, because it was kind of like, okay, it's not a full on sequel, but actually they've added in enough quirky, engaging stuff, and the storytelling was still up to scratch. It was,
but it was of a character that you'd grown to love over the previous game. You want to find out, especially with the kind of cliffhanger ending of 2 with the Pope.
It's a really nice continuation,
and Rangers fans would want to continue on because you get to beat the Pope up. So there you go. Spoiler alert.
Oh dear.
Sorry, shouldn't probably say that, but
here we are.
Hi, Richard.
How do we get out of this one?
Anywho,
evil Pope.
There you go. A Templar Pope. The next game in the series is the end of the Ezio trilogy. It is Revelations.
Yes, Revelations.
Follows Ezio to Constantinople.
Do
you know that Istanbul was Constantinople? There's a song about that.
There's many songs about that.
I know, but the famous one is Istanbul was Constantinople. Okay, sorry.
Right, yeah. What was that again?
I have no idea. I don't know. But it's a song.
Okay.
Sorry. I thought that joke was slightly more obvious, but maybe it's far too niche. Anyway, Constantinople between the years of 1511 to 1512. So I was actually surprised that it wasn't. I always assumed that it was a much bigger jump between Brotherhood and Revelations, but it's only 4 years.
Oh, you're thinking because he's got a grey beard now?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think by the...
Yeah.
I was going to say 2011. 1511, that's 35 years after his first appearance.
Fair.
So, and it would have been, what, 20 or something?
Aye, something like that. Yeah, so, like late teenage, like 18 or something.
So, he's in his 50s now.
Yeah, fair enough. So this one was interesting because it was kind of billed as the sort of tying together of the Ezio and the Altair story, because there was a lot to do with Altair in there. The sort of crux of the story is that Ezio has gone to Constantinople to find Altair's keys to his vault to uncover the secrets of, whatever. Pieces of Eden, probably.
Yeah, there's
an apple or something.
There's a bunch of tie-in Altair sequences in this game.
And there's flashbacks and, and things like that, which was interesting for sure. This one for me...
you famously never liked this one, yeah.
Didn't love it. But I wonder if I went back and, just played this one. Not having played 2 or Brotherhood so recently.
Yeah.
Remember, I played these back to back to back. I was ready for a bit of change. I was ready to kind of be out of that same engine. It's the year after, it's annualized.
Yeah.
Same engine, and was just kind of ready to be done with Ezio's story. I liked Ezio a lot. I still do. He's probably my favourite character. That's an obvious statement. Everyone kind of has that same idea. Maybe not my top game, but probably favourite character.
Yeah.
I don't know. I figured. I just felt that the Constantinople stuff was. I think the city itself was probably the least interesting.
See, that is interesting because I always. Now, yeah, okay, maybe this is rose tinted glasses.
Okay.
And again, it's been so long, and I can't even really remember fully how I felt about it at the time.
Yeah.
Because it's been 5 10 years.
Yeah.
Because I haven't touched it since.
Of course.
But I always liked the vibe of the city. Mm-hmm. I really like visually.
Okay.
I always kind of really like that smoky kind of Eurasian feel. But yeah, you're probably right in terms of they were starting to kind of the well was draining in terms of
starting to get
creativity.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, okay, this is pretty much the same thing again in a slightly different setting. They've got the bombs was like the main gameplay addition. Which
the bombs,
I definitely remember not finding interesting. I think I hardly ever used them.
The hidden hook.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Instead of alongside the hidden blade for no real reason other than changing the way that climbing terrain worked. They
shoehorned.
It literally, I mean, it was in the shape of a shoehorn as well. It was but it was shoehorned in because they almost created the problem that they needed to solve. Do you know what I mean? Like they created, we want to just like make these less scalable buildings, but we'll give you a tool to make you be able to scale them. And it's like, well, then just make them scalable in the first place. But anyway, they count that as a new gameplay feature. I never did. And then also, do you remember, had this weird, almost top-down, like RPG, strategy mini game in it.
I don't remember that at all.
Where you were like commanding like a small army against like oncoming enemies who were coming in with like battalions and like.
So this was the tower defense thing, was it?
I think it was, yeah,
kind
of. Which I'll say now, and because it will come into it later, I dislike. 9 times out of 10, I dislike when Assassin's Creed tries not to be about assassins.
Yeah.
That's an obvious statement, and there's only one game that we'll talk about where that works for me. But, and for kind of obvious reasons, but, and we'll come to it later, but when they start to put you as an assassin in big battle sequences, you're like, no, this is you're meant to slink in the shadows.
It's odd.
It's not where it kind of vibes as an Assassin's Creed game for me, when you're not being an assassin effectively. So that was like a weird, I remember engaging with the forced story mission where you had to do that and going, I hate this, I don't want to do this, and then just never touched it again. So this was kind of the first time where it felt like sort of quote unquote innovation for innovation's sake.
Yeah. Definitely right away you had that sense from this game. It was just like, okay, this is now an annual thing, and this is what we're getting. It's kind of, they've run out of steam a bit in terms of changing it up. Yeah.
Story-wise, I think it's really interesting, the whole linking Altair Tetsu. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's odd for me. This is probably of the ones that I've played, because I haven't played every single one, which we'll get to.
I've not played 3 of them, I think. 2 of them. Yeah. Of the main ones.
We'll fill in those details later, but this for me is the one I remember least.
Yeah.
Yet somehow I've always maintained the sense that I never disliked it the way you did. That there was just things about it that I just enjoyed being in it. But again, I don't know if it was just, it was expected at the time that I was going to play it and just
of course
play through it and enjoy it and move on to the next thing.
I think if I was playing them annually, year to year, I think I'd have a way different opinion of Revelations. I think it was circumstantial for me. I think it was the being fatigued on the Ezio story. I'd just played 3 Assassin's Creed games, like straight, back to back from each other, and I was ready for a change, and I knew a change was coming because 3 and 4, which we'll move on to, did offer some differences.
You felt like they surely had to make it feel and actually
so I knew that was coming because those games were already out, or at least one of them was. So
I feel like at the time after Revelations, at the time thinking, well, surely they're going to take 2 years off again, because how can they, if they're going to mix it up, different character and all this stuff, how can they do that in a year? But they did. And
to a fault.
Well, we'll
let's go into it.
We'll see. But the last thing I'll say about Revelations is I think it speaks volumes that I'm even saying I can barely even remember it at all, and I think that shows that it's one of, if not the least inspiring of the titles. Not to say it's a bad game.
I think
'cause
there's
it's not.
I think
but
there's
just
ones that
uninspired.
I think it's yes. I think that's it exactly. Story wise, there's some interesting stuff. It's probably a better game than some. Then maybe I'd even rank higher than it in my own estimations. But I think it's just when you put it in context of, the final one of a trilogy of games. You would almost expect it to end on the highest note, and it almost ends. It kind of fizzles out a little bit.
Yeah.
A bit more.
It was a nice wee holiday to Istanbul, nothing more.
There
you go.
Constantinople, I'm sorry, at the time. Anyway, next up on our docket is Assassin's Creed 3, released in 2012. Ooh. Set during the American Revolution from 1760 to 1783. So we are jumping, 250 years into the future here. We follow Haytham Kenway at the start of the game, and then gasp! Spoiler alert! You're playing as a Templar for the first bit. I always thought that was very interesting. I liked that part. However, we then go and play as his Native American son from his brief fling with a Native American called Connor. I'm not going to try and pronounce his real Native American name, for I would get cancelled. Anyway.
You should try it.
I've not even got it written down, so
Okay.
I'm just not even going to try. Connor Kenway, the worst protagonist. Safe to say?
Misunderstood.
Oh, he's just a misunderstood teenager with his mohawk. He just...
He was definitely lacking in
He was just a whiny wee git.
emotional depth.
He just complained the whole game.
Yeah.
This was an interesting one because I had to say I didn't hate it as much as other people do. However, it's low on my rankings. We'll get to our rankings at the end. Low on the rankings, but I liked the American Revolution setting. Wish they'd done more with it. I think that it was... what's the best way to put it? The world that they created with the wilderness, with the sort of... your Boston and New York and stuff that wasn't built up, that tall or that varied or interesting.
Which was, to me, at the time, criminal.
Exactly.
Because I just found it so frightfully dull.
It was like a breath of fresh air for the first couple of hours, and then you went, wait, this is what it is the whole time. And
Yeah,
then
I didn't feel pulled in by any
No.
particular bit of the places you could go. I mean, it was kind of nice and out in the kind of open wildernessy bits, but still there wasn't really much going on there.
This took obviously back to that Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 approach of being more segmented, smaller areas, which I don't think really worked to its benefit in this case.
Not for me.
But I think that the time period that they chose for it, while interesting, they could tell interesting stories there. I don't think they could have made one dynamic city because these cities were quite lackluster at their inception in real history. Do you know what I mean? They were all built the same because it was the same group of settlers that moved across from Britain and things like that. So I think that if this was probably anything other than Assassin's Creed game set in this time, I think it could have been more interesting. Maybe that's a hindsight 2020 that, I don't know what the answer to that would be, but I think, calling it an Assassin's Creed game was the gave it a certain set of expectations and it just didn't really do it.
I mean, I'm sure there is a memorable way to make an American Revolution game.
Yeah.
But for me, this wasn't it.
No.
It didn't, I mean, I feel like it should have gave me a history lesson on it and made me feel, really enthused by it all, but it just didn't. I was so put off by... This was kind of the first Assassin's Creed game where I got that sense of, they're getting too big for their boots now.
Okay.
I couldn't really keep up with... It just seemed to kind of throw these things out during the 8-hour tutorial section. Is that what they always talk about? It's like 8 hours, and then it's like, oh, it's opened up again.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're just expected to know what this is. And then there's this house thing, and there's like another house thing. What's going on here?
Yeah,
like I just didn't know. It just sort of
kind of had that Monteriggioni thing we were talking about with like upgrading your homestead that has come into a lot of the games, but it just wasn't as engaging. It wasn't as nearly as memorable as a story.
I don't know. I just found it really odd. It was just this kind of vapid experience of just being like, all right, let's move on to this next thing without giving. Like, who knows what just happened here? I don't know. It just kind of
just
happens.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, what's going on here?
I
don't know.
You don't. It's interesting because I feel like the stories that they tell. Maybe this is a good way to kind of put it. I feel like the sort of fictional stories that they tell. You know what? Actually, here's what I think. I might have just come up with the reason why the story doesn't work for me. Is that in the previous games, the story that they were telling was completely fictional, completely made up. Whereas in 3, it was true world events, shoehorning in a character.
Yeah.
Oh, he was here. He was here during that battle in this place. You know what I mean?
Obviously the Native American angle to it, just them trying to. I mean, I suppose it's slightly fitting, really, that the game about the game about America in the series is a melting pot of things. I just don't think it's a successful melting pot.
No,
because this was the first introduction of naval combat.
Exactly. Well, that's it. That's one of my wee notes here. So we've got it had a slight new gameplay feel. It had
there's things to like about it.
Yep.
Because, like you say, the gameplay, the way it feels was smoother.
It was smoother. Yep. It was more refined, just to control.
Yeah.
It introduced some muskets and I suppose guns were technically in the in 2 in Brotherhood and stuff. Anyway, ignore that. But like the traversal of trees and things like that, which opened up your sort of parkour paths, but allowed the world to be a bit less just like building. You could put a bit of foliage in there and things like that, and just make it a bit better.
Yeah.
Which was nice. That's obviously getting into some nitty gritty and things like that. Ding.
Love those dings.
Ding. Definitely. What have I said? Definitely felt different to the previous games that were starting to get stale. However, featured a boring story. We spoke about that there. Just nothing happens. What's going on? Very confusing. I don't like this character. This main character is boring.
It's
I don't
hard
like him.
to put the finger on it.
It is.
It's just a bit of a. I want to reserve the word bloated for future
the obvious
ones.
Yes.
But I just feel like it was too unfocused for its own good.
Yep.
I mean, I think they were just trying to make it feel expansive, and it just didn't work.
I think the twist, after your tutorial of the character you've been playing as a Templar was good, but I think it then just put it back, like it just slowed everything down when you actually.
It was such a slow. I just didn't.
I felt it was forgivable at first because you're all right. No, I'm playing this as this character. We don't know him. We're getting to know him and stuff like that. I get that.
Yeah.
And then it stopped when you found out he was a Templar, and then the tutorials kept coming because it introduced the tree, the wilderness section, the hunting of the animals for pelts and upgrading pouches and all this. It just the tutorial aspect kept going, and it's that slow bit of playing as like child Connor and then teenage Connor, and then you're like, oh my goodness, can we just like give him the suit, put the hood up, give him the hidden blade, and let us get on with this, please, because I'm so bored.
Slow, boring, unfocused are my words for.
However, from the ashes riseth a phoenix.
Somehow,
who knows how, but next on our list is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Woohoo!
Yeah, arguably the best in the series. which we'll talk about later. This was the first game to come out on the new consoles for the time, PS4, cross-gen.
Yeah,
so
that
it was
was
still on PS3. I played it first on PS3. Worked really well. It was great. It was more polished on the PS4 when I... Did I ever replay it? No, I played because Kerry had the PS4 on launch. She had it, so I played it a bit of hers as well. This was set in the Caribbean during the golden age of piracy, from 1715 to 1722. So we've jumped back in time. The reason being is because you're playing as Edward Kenway, Connor's grandpapa, or Hatham's da. He assumes the role of an assassin. He is a pirate, of course. Assumes the role of an assassin that he escapes from or comes across on an island. I can't exactly remember. Not too long since played the beginning of the game again, actually. And then, is sort of taken in. I think the assassin that he portrays is one who's like a turncoat assassin who's working for the Templars, and it kind of gets him in with the Templars in Kingston and things like that. So I think that's kind of where the story kind of takes off from. And then, through meeting up with the actual assassins throughout the game becomes one. And anyway, that's all cool. That's story stuff. This one was like a real jump in quality with that kind of next gen-ness. It still, looked prettier and everything, but the main selling point was, as we spoke about in 3, is that naval combat got refined and became a gameplay feature that would easily have been a standalone game.
Its own game.
It could have easily been a standalone game. It's that good.
Well, this game is mostly water.
Exactly.
Isn't it? The map
is something like 80% water or something like that,
Yeah. Wow. Just didn't see it coming.
No.
And, I feel like a lot of it is down to... Because a lot was made of the creative director at the time. I can't remember his name. I think he's been cancelled.
Yeah. Oops.
But, no, I just remember, a lot of praise was heaped on him for kind of driving the direction of it and really kind of being genuine about, right, we need to actually mix this up and make something just fun and... give it some life again. And oh my goodness, the variety of landscapes, the sense of wonderfully kind of exotic places you can see and almost like smell. Just the pirate vibe was nailed. And somehow that blended with the kind of core Assassin's Creed mechanics, which again were, I think, balanced perfectly in this when you were going through those sequences. It just seemed to work. It was kind of a nice ebb and flow of coming off your boat and kind of, right, okay, let's go and do some of that AC stuff, and then getting back on the boat and get really invested in the like building up your ship.
In its own right had you could level up your character, the weaponry, you could hunt animals and things. It was great for that.
It was all,
but you could also level up your ship and make it better in combat.
And yes, now obviously I complain about games having like too much in them for their own good. This game had a lot in it, but I think it was all really quite clear.
Well, I thought I was kind of thinking that because it's I would say manageable. What was good about it was good for completionist. I never went to the 100%, but I remember getting all the pelts.
I got close
to it
rare
as well.
For me. It was 92 or something.
Must have been the same. The only thing I didn't level up fully was the Jackdaw, was the ship. Like I got it pretty much, damn near close to it being.
I can't remember if I
done.
did it. I think I might.
But I definitely discovered all the viewpoints. I went on every island, got all the chests on each island. That would be shown by the viewpoint. But the islands, especially the smaller ones, were so manageable. I could just go, I'm going to go and do that one, and I'll just clear it out because it will only take me 5-10 minutes to do that. So it was like encouraging that that end game definitely had a very satisfying loop that you were feeling like you were making good progress if you had a bit of a completionist mindset just by jumping in and sailing, taking over a couple of ships.
And all the while, this was perhaps the first time, I mean, for sure, in like a big AAA mainstream game where as you're going about these things, just that pirate atmosphere is it's just so fun.
Yeah.
And just sailing out into a direction and something exciting would happen.
Yep.
You just, the sounds of the kind of mortar fire and be like, oh, here we go.
And the sea shanties being sung.
Yeah, the sea shanties were great. It's like showed me some traditional songs and shanties that I've just enjoyed since.
Yep.
And getting caught up in a typhoon. There was storms and they were like really exciting.
Hunting sharks and whales and the bell.
Yeah.
The diving sequences where you could go and search
and it was
for
all
treasure.
It was all quite dynamic and emergent as well because for example, you could get caught up in one of these tornado storm things while trying to take over one of the what do you call it?
The bases, like the forts.
Forts.
From your ship,
and that could just get really crazy and exciting. Because you had to brace and
this is one you could gush over forever. Do you know what I mean?
It was just so much fun. They just seemed to balance all this perfectly somehow.
So I made a statement earlier where I felt that any time Assassin's Creed wasn't being assassins and slinking about didn't work for me, and there was one exception, and it was this game. It balanced it well where, okay, right, if I was being really nitpicky, it's not all that assassin-y, because you're on a big ship and you've got a big crew and you're bored, and you're not sneaking onto ships and killing everyone on the ship, like they could have done because it's an Assassin's Creed game and it's stealth. So, but this is the only time where it's just not bothered me because it's imperative because of the world that they built that you are able to do this. You need to be able to do this because otherwise, what's the point? Like, give you this big playground with nothing engaging to do in it. This was the only way to make it happen. So yes, you could argue this could have just been pirate the game. But it worked with that Assassin's Creed name. It just did, but really.
Well,
really
it's a bit like it's always quite hard to compare these things. It's a bit like when a successful band changes up a lineup or their sound and it works.
Yeah.
And then it's almost as if you've got two sets of fans. I like this style or that style.
Yeah.
But it was such a breath of fresh air from the doldrums of 3.
Yes.
Because it was so dull.
Yeah.
And this just wasn't dull at all.
And for me, the doldrums of Revelations and then 3 and then finally getting onto Black Flag and going like, right, here we go. And down to even silly things like I remember, we're getting into the minutiae here, but the PlayStation 3 version and the PlayStation 4 version, I remember when you would run in the PS3 version, it was just like the old games, and then in 4 it had this like camera shake quality, and I was like,
"Oh, really? Yeah." No, because I had my PS4 on launch day,
exactly,
and that was a launch game for me, and I think that kind of just helped slightly as well push it into that next level for me because
dynamic. There's more going on.
Just having that little bit of a boost of performance, I guess, at the time, and it just feeling like, I was aware that it was still a PS3 game, really, but just having that extra bit of a refined thing, like, right, okay, I'm really enjoying Assassin's Creed still. It looks great and it plays, is better than it ever has. It's just got all this fun stuff in, and I was just so, there wasn't much to play still in that launch window, so I think that helped me want to just get so lost in it and
great
do
launch game.
So much in it.
A fantastic launch game for sure. That's definitely would have helped in that sense, but surprisingly ran well as I remember on the PS3. That's where I spent the most time on it, was on PS3. That's where my save file of the mostly completed. It was for a game of that size and scale to have worked on the PS3 was really impressive, I thought, as well. Right, let's we've got a couple. Well, we've got one here that we can kind of skim over a wee bit. 2014 was an odd year for Assassin's Creed. 2014 saw the release of 2 simultaneous releases. We had one on PS3 and Xbox 360, which was Assassin's Creed Rogue, and one on PS4 and Xbox One called Assassin's Creed Unity.
Yes.
Neither helped each other.
It's a very
The
odd
development
situation.
of both of them did not help either of them, I think. So
Bad decision.
they should definitely have just cut ties for the old console and just focused on the new one. However, so let's very, very briefly talk about Rogue. This is one that I've not played, I've not touched ever. Part of me's always thought I wouldn't be adverse to it, but
I played half of it recently.
Lockdown time.
For some reason, something compelled me in the height of lockdown to be like, I just want something to play, and I was kind of getting some nostalgia for, you know, oldish Assassin's Creed vibes, and I was like, what have I not played?
You like Black Flag, so you're thinking, right?
I liked it a lot.
Oh, exactly. So I'll play effectively Black Flag 2. But a story that I've not played before in a setting that I've not played before.
Unfortunately. Now playing it, 6 years after it came out, it did feel old. Definitely by that point. It was
even in my slight replay of Black Flag, I was like, yes, this is my favorite. Spoiler alert. But it's I'm not going to play the full
by
thing.
Today's standards, it's janky.
Yep.
And I think just something about I kind of hold on to the kind of cherished uniqueness of what Black Flag was, and something about trying to play this kind of like
bastardized version
impression
of it. Yes.
Just didn't sit well with me, and I was like, I'm not getting into this at all.
So,
and I kind of struggled through to the halfway point. I was like, I'm just bored.
Good,
I'm not enjoying this.
This was set during the French and Indian War between the years 1752 and 1760. So this is closer in time to the Assassin's Creed 3, the events of 3. This was almost identical to Black Flag in design and implementation. However, you play the role of a turncoat assassin working for the Templars. Interesting, quote unquote, on paper, but from what I've heard, just doesn't do anything special. You know, is what it is. And it was massively overshadowed by Unity, good or bad. You know, with Unity, the positives and negatives of Unity.
Yeah.
So let's just move on to Unity. That's all we really need to say about Rogue. You can skip that one.
Yeah.
Unity was released alongside Rogue, as we said, in 2014, exclusively for PS4 and Xbox One. So this is the first true next-gen Assassin's Creed. This was set during the French Revolution from 1789 to 1794 in Paris, playing as Arnaud Dorian. Memorable name. I would not have remembered that if not for looking. This gameplay featured, the game featured many gameplay innovations, made it stand out from the previous generation. I'm saying the good parts first before we talk about the negatives.
To a point.
It was a looker. Looked lovely.
Again, which has been such a theme, was definitely the main.
Was great. Paris was beautiful. I thought they did a great job. Now I think this is what didn't help the technical aspect of it was this like crowd density. You know, that sort of French Revolution, everyone taking to the streets kind of thing. There was a lot of play with being able to sort of traverse interiors of buildings, not every building, but a lot of, you know, parkour runs would take you in and out of buildings and things like that. That was interesting. They had a better parkour system, able to climb down. You know, that they'd never been able to do up to that point. It was always just climbing up, and then everything was just like. Remember when you were in like old AC games where you would just like jump, and then it would just like fully jump off, and you'd be like, I'm about to die, or just lose all my health.
Hope that you were doing the right thing.
Yeah. Whereas this was, you know, you'd hold a different button input, and it would take you down in this very stylish way. I felt that the parkour system looked its best, or was looking more refined. I remember that's what excited me when this game was coming out.
I appreciated that stuff at the time, but I remember thinking it wasn't possibly executed that well. I remember being annoyed by what the camera did and stuff. Okay. During a lot of that, but
I get that.
But for the next game, yes, putting that in place definitely helped.
Also, actual stealth system. Finally, you know, like crouching and
crouch behind
hiding behind walls, and when you were hidden behind a wall and crouch, you know you were hidden, because that was sometimes the thing where you're like in Assassin's Creed, you're just like standing awkwardly behind a wall, going, are they going to see me? Like, am I going to be visible? Whereas like it was like, no, you're hidden here, and things like that. Unfortunately, though, the game was plagued with plethoras of bugs and glitches, frame rate drops, and the like. For some people, missing textures, missing faces, floating eyeballs, like hilarious things that you'll have seen memes of kicking about.
A lot of technical
as well. Now,
mishaps.
in my playthrough, all I can really remember is frame drops. That's all I can remember. Now, 2014, Sam probably didn't notice as much or care as much as 2022 Sam does. He cares about frame rates and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, I had a really positive experience with Unity. I really, really enjoyed it. Warts and all. I'm not going to say that it's the best one. No, nowhere near that. But I really, really liked Paris. I liked the area. Well,
we were, because we had become fast friends by this point, and this was kind of our first big thing,
new release
that we were kind of gassing each other up with together. I remember the run into that game quite well.
Yep,
and it was like a very different experience for me.
100%.
I got so. Do you know what it was actually for me? Yeah, a little bit of the technical stuff, but mainly I was just really put off by the combat.
Interesting.
I remember just hating how it played.
I don't remember that standing out. I don't remember positively or negatively, to be honest.
I just got so frustrated with, I think, just the heaviness of the game.
Okay.
And I was definitely too reactionary. Right. I didn't actually...
Because you did eventually go and play it, though, didn't you?
Yeah, so I got it, I think, on day one.
Yep.
Tried playing it for however long it was getting so frustrated, and I got really annoyed and just took it and traded it in right away.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not my Assassin's Creed. Like, Black Flag is dead, long live Black Flag. I couldn't accept that this was what they had done. I was like, it's just a generic Assassin's Creed game that doesn't feel good to play. Get out of here. But I think I can't remember when I went back. Maybe it was
when I remember you played it when we moved in to the first flat.
Was that right?
Yeah.
So you must.
And it was my copy.
Right. Yeah. So I gave it another chance. It'd probably been patched a bit, I guess, and probably just really took the time to get to grips with how it felt. And then really appreciating, the depiction of Paris in that time is even to this day, it still looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. I played it during lockdown. Played probably half of it, and I had really enjoyed it. Like,
it's got a very, very oil painting quality.
Yes. Yep.
That kind of golden lighting is what we always just, it was, because Arno is not...
Nope, he's a blank slate character.
He's a blank slate. Paris, when is it set again?
French Revolution, right? Yeah.
Shows you how much I even remember about what it was trying to do. But of course,
Les Mis time frame.
Right, yeah. So definitely the main character.
Yeah.
And really for me that is it. I enjoy that side of it enough that I think I do like it more than one or two other games by proxy.
It's interesting. It introduced there was a couple of things that had like a multiplayer suite, but no one cares about that. Like, you could do co-op missions and stuff like that. It was the idea was cool on paper, but it didn't really work.
Trying to kind of give it the idea that this was a kind of cooperative band of
assassins or whatever.
And I think that was another one of my issues with it, which I kind of just, in order to kind of just go traverse the city and enjoy the city, I put aside my problem with the fact that this truly was now when I was starting to feel with Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed games like, oh my god, I've just opened the map.
Oh, and there's like 7 million icons.
I've just started the game.
Yep.
What is going on?
That was particularly egregious, that game.
You'd zoom out and you couldn't see anything.
No.
It was just all icons. I'm like, what are these icons? And so many of them were soulless, pointless. Like,
going into a chest and just clicking square.
Why should I care about this? Or it was something that was based on, oh, well, you can only do this thing if you log into your Uplay account, or
Yeah.
or this is tied to this thing that's kind of out with the story, so actually it's not relevant. And what is going on?
It was bad
And
for that.
this is when I really started to be deeply distrustful of Ubisoft. Maybe not like directly, overtly, because there was still other things that going on that in gaming that I wasn't as passionate about that particular feeling as I am these days. But I just remember thinking, oh, this is different and not in a good way.
Mm-hmm. There was some interesting innovations. We spoke about the parkour thing that definitely gets more refined as it goes on, but there was upgrades to like individual components of your armor and your swords and things like that. You could build your character more stealthy. You could build him more melee focused and a bit more brutish as well, with the gauntlets and.
But again, I don't think
I
don't think they did it in a good way, because right from the start of the game, you could just buy this stuff, and it was just all there. And I never liked that. I was a bit like,
I get that.
I liked how they kind of tastefully brought things in the previous games.
That's a fair.
Made everything feel meaningful.
Yeah.
I just felt like there was nothing felt meaningful in this game other than the visual depiction and the obviously the life given to Paris.
Of course.
That was it.
One thing that I did definitely like that changed it up was that assassinations were no longer linear in the same way as they were before. Like for like big set piece assassinations, like
fair enough.
You could do specific little side objectives within the mission to gain secret entrances. You could get keys that would get you into the Notre Dame, and there was special assassination bits. I remember the famous one they showed was that you could sneak your way into the priest side of the confessional booth, or be and whatever, and assassinate the guy through the thing. But you could also he was like walking around the cathedral, so you could just drop down and assassinate him and then fight off his guards. You could really kind of it was a bit more open, and I liked that. I thought it was good. I found that any time I would then go back and maybe replay bits or stuff, I would just do it the same way as I did before, so I didn't really play around with that too much. But I did. I appreciated it.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was an odd one for me, and I think I fairly enjoyed kind of golden pathing.
Yes.
The main story, but I seem to remember not even, just not doing it very well. Just kind of struggling through it, but probably kind of just having a laugh at me, almost in a bit like how I described playing through Hitman 2 recently.
Just
where
I'm not playing this properly at all, but I'm having fun.
I'm just doing a terrible job of finding the different ways to do it or understanding what it's trying to get me to do, but getting through it and I don't know. There was enough to enjoy somehow for me to get through it, but it's like, it would be like a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
That's fair. That's fair. Let's press on. We move on to Assassin's Creed Syndicate, released in 2015. This was a good game
for me. A bit of a comeback again.
Yeah,
it felt very similar to the 3 to Black Flag transition.
Yes, this was what the first foray onto the next gen consoles should have been. Not necessarily this game, quote unquote. I think it was a better game in story and characters overall, but the sort of technical prowess, the refinement, and I feel that if they hadn't been, of course it was a different team and stuff, but if they hadn't been sort of putting eggs in 2 baskets with Rogue, I was about to say Rogue One, that's Star Wars, Rogue and Unity, then I think it could have been more polished.
In an ideal world, they would have not done Rogue or Unity, just taken a year off.
Yep, and came out with Syndicate.
And came out with Syndicate, and maybe Syndicate could have been even better if they had just spent more time on that.
So, Syndicate sold softly because of Unity. Unity did not help Syndicate at all, which encouraged the first hiatus, the first year off since 1 to 2, but we'll get to that in a second. This was set in during the Industrial Revolution in London in 1868, so this is the most modern Assassin's Creed has ever gotten, was the Industrial Revolution, which is interesting. So this follows the life of twins, Jacob and Evie Fry. I thought they were lovable or nice, likable characters played off each other well. I bought that they were siblings. Do you know what I mean? I think you could
clearly there's a theme here where Assassin's Creed games have always been more enjoyable when the characters and characterizations are fun, upbeat,
and likable,
jovial,
exactly,
likable,
exactly. Because Edward Kenway was, a pirate, so he's jovial. He's,
it just seems
drinking. Ezio was a sort of, posh, Italian boy that was just got all the girls and was very handsome, but was funny with that and stuff. So yeah, definitely works its best. Kind of cuts all the pretense. These guys they know about the Assassin's Order. They're just like, yeah, we know, we're straight in. It's not like this, your father was actually an assassin, that like every other game tried to do before. So it felt that you were into it quite quick. There was no
doesn't waste too much time. Yeah,
doesn't waste time. The world itself, the sort of the modernization, quote unquote, of the world allowed for interesting things. Like it felt bigger, the buildings were bigger, the streets were bigger because there was horse-drawn carriages and they had to be able to fit, all that. So there was the zip lines that you could shoot across these, larger open areas. So there was definitely this feeling of scale, more so than in any other game. I think they reduced the population density a little bit from that French Revolution, though I think that allowed that to definitely run better.
Oh yeah,
like that. But you would never really have noticed that.
No, because the kind of the horse and cart stuff running through the streets, it was a good, it was well done in that way, I think.
But because of that Industrial Revolution in England or in London at the time, you really do get this very varied city. You can go to the factories, the big chimneys with the smoke coming out of it. You can go to Buckingham Palace. You can go to, Westminster, Big Ben, and all these grand royal buildings, and then you can go to slums. There was a real diversity in the world. I think this game would have been perceived a lot better had Unity not happened. I think, as we said at the start, I think this was really the last time, in my opinion, that the series has been truly great.
Yes, I would agree. Again, it felt they really did do a good job of portraying the kind of industrialization.
Yeah.
It felt less generic. Now, as much as I gushed about the kind of the niceness of Paris, it felt less generic of a setting to kind of traverse.
Yeah.
Because of that, and yeah, like there was a hook thing, right? Mechanic. You could shoot it up and just
zip, like a zip wrist gauntlet thing that you could like zip up.
Like that was kind of a neat way to.
Well, I think because it was much more vertical, taller buildings. You were able to escape up to the rooftops quicker. Everything just felt faster. If you were escaping enemies, you felt more badass. I feel, things like that. You could just you could just zip across and get away from them. You felt like you were more set up to deal with the issues that would come to an assassin during the Industrial Revolution in London.
Yeah, it
felt appropriate.
It was just a bit, now not to the same extent, but it was a bit of that Black Flag feeling again, where there's a lot in it again, and still some things on the map that I was willing to ignore, but I felt better about ignoring some of the little things that I didn't really care about because of they just seem to make it more fun again, more engaging with all the various London-y things, and it was just a bit, again, a bit of a fresh air, just a good time versus Unity. And
it was so with each twin, you could sort of jump back and forth between them, and some story missions were exclusively for obviously so that twin could go and do something to progress the story. But Jacob was effectively, it's quite an interesting way that the Templars have taken over London, and you're effectively trying to just like band together the people of London to overthrow the Templars that have taken over. So Jacob decides it's a good idea to start like a street gang, and you work your way through liberating boroughs of London. So that kind of ticks that Ubisoft checklist box quite nicely with that there. But then Evie's really doing the classic Assassin's Creed storytelling, the more linear missions where you're going and finding information and
am I right in
sneaking
saying
about.
she was more of the stealthy side, and he was more of the rough and tumble stuff.
So and their skill trees sort of reflected that. There was specific skills for each character that you could use, but it was interesting. It kept the gameplay varied. You knew that when you were playing as Jacob, you were maybe going to be in a bit more combat scenario, but then you would it kind of just made it obvious not what you were meant to do, but yeah, just a nice time, good time.
They mixed it up enough,
yeah,
but I think there was still definitely that underlying sense of fatigue.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
there was still a lot of fundamental stuff that was still what made it an Assassin's Creed game in
100%.
there, and it had still been annual up
Yep.
to this point, and from 2.
Yep.
And
absolutely. It was definitely
they read the
fatigued.
tea leaves.
Definitely read the tea leaves, and I think that if not that obviously the innovations need to happen, but say that Assassin's Creed went from 2. Or what? Let's say even 1 to 2 to 4 to Syndicate. You'd be like, and had like years off in between. Obviously, and like however many years were in between each one of those, that's how much time they had. You'd be like, oh my goodness, this is like one of the greatest like open world. Just that progression.
Well, yeah, because
to a sense,
there would have been more of a distinction between the different vibes of the games there. They kind of the way they ended up doing it, unfortunately, made them kind of blend together a bit more.
Well, we said that when we were talking about 2 to Brotherhood. We were like, this happens in one of them. I can't remember which one, but you get the gist.
It was good at the time because that was still only the third game. It was
exactly.
like, okay, we're still into this.
Still new. It's just hindsight. It's the same game can work at context is key. This game is good, but it came at the end of a plethora of too many games annualized, so that kind of didn't help. So we move on to my least favorite era of Assassin's Creed, the modern day.
Our least favorite.
Our least favorite. I think that's fair to say. We move on to Assassin's Creed Origins. I'm just gonna. We've spoken about these games before. Every complaint that we make about these just goes for all of them here. So let's just skim over these. To game by game, we'll talk about how they are all together.
It's basically been its own trilogy, really.
It's been its own trilogy so far. First one released in 2017. It's set in ancient Egypt between 49 to 43 BC. So we're going all the way back further in the past than any other game that we've played. We follow the life of Bayek of Siwa. This game shows the initial incarnations of the Assassins and the Templars and shows the seed of what they will eventually turn into. So again, same kind of story thing that we're going to be talking about in all of these here. This is the biggest change in Assassin's Creed, probably. I mean, well, definitely. Brand new engine, brand new combat system, and effectively turning it from RPG light to this is a full scale RPG now. This is what it is. It's an RPG.
Almost. I would say
more than it ever has been in the past.
Definitely, yeah. For the most part, a Western RPG.
Yes,
probably still wasn't quite as in depth as of a Western RPG than something like The Witcher 3, but
no, but
close enough.
Close enough. Definitely Witcher influenced.
Yes, yeah,
no question
for sure. Yeah,
with like the sort of just constantly looting and. Oh, the number on this sword is better than the number on that sword, so I'm going to equip it. You know,
which we obviously had our reservations about. It's not really what we're wanting out of an Assassin's Creed game, especially me. I mean, but
and me as well. And more surprisingly me, but the scope and scale, this and time spent in these games just ballooned. To create a game. To complete one of these games takes the same amount of time as the Ezio trilogy, story-wise.
Oh,
isn't that disgusting?
So what is the main story thing for Origins?
Maybe not Origins, but definitely Odyssey. It's something like 100 hours.
Did you finish Origins?
Yes.
So you finished it?
Right. Okay. So here we go. So I finished Origins didn't finish Odyssey, haven't touched Valhalla.
And I've not even touched Odyssey.
Right, okay, so here, what I'm going to do, because we're going to talk about the same things here. Odyssey released in 2018. This was set during the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta between 431 to 422 BC. This one definitely jumped into that RPG element more, where you could choose your character. You could choose a male or female character, Alexios or Cassandra. It's heavily bloated. This is the only Assassin's Creed game that I've started and not finished. And the only one that you haven't.
I mean, I just
before Valhalla, but
I mean, having even with Origins, just I just gave up because it was just too big.
Yep.
Like there was like having to go to these various areas and having to level up so much and. Some of the missions were just so long, and I was just like, "Oh my!"
Well, we'll talk about that side of it when we come to sort of wrap this trilogy up, because we've spoken about this before. It'd be unfair to just skim right over it, but we'll talk about the leveling thing in a second. This featured again. It kind of comes into that, like when Assassin's Creed isn't about assassins. This game, Origins still felt like it could have. You were still an assassin. It was still stealthy enough, but this was like you're a Spartan. They're like famously the loudest, most aggressive warriors of all time. Like it's literally the polar opposite of what an assassin is.
And the same could be said with the Vikings and
exactly. This is not Assassin's Creed. Now,
no,
you could say that about a pirate as well. So fair, I'll take that on board. But when you're taking part in full-scale Spartan battles and you're Spartan kicking people in the chest off of cliffs and stuff.
They weren't even trying to hide it, though.
No, they weren't.
At that point.
They weren't. So it's just... but even down to things like when you opened up Odyssey, I don't think this wasn't in Origins, but in Odyssey there was like the whole list of... It was almost like a Nemesis system from... Oh. It wasn't a Nemesis system, but like... 50 Templar names and like where they're situated in the map, and you're like at the beginning of the game as well, and it tells you this guy will be too difficult for you. You need to level up, sort of thing. I'm like, I can't see my way through this at all. Mythical powers started coming into it. Now, this was where it was interesting because obviously there's been a supernatural element to Assassin's Creed that we've really skimmed over with the Pieces of Eden and the precursor age and stuff.
But the way it's handled, though,
it felt quite grounded. Everything felt quite realistic when you were playing it. A hidden blade and things like that. But it was fairly realistic. But this is where you were like, you can do a regular attack or a heavy attack, but then hold L1 and you will use the Piece of Eden to burn gold and hit people harder. You're like, nah.
All the while the hit point numbers are flying out of their bodies.
Exactly.
I'm like, what's happening here?
This
is not Assassin's
Creed. That leads us on to Valhalla, which was a year off. I totally forgot that. It was also a year off.
You wouldn't know.
First cross-gen between the old PS4 and PS5 generation. Shares the same engine as the prior two games. A lot of the design elements that did not work for either of us are still present here. You follow a Viking Eivor during the Viking invasion of the British Isles during 872 to 878 AD. Criticised for its length, technical issues, and repetitive structure was something I saw on Wikipedia, which is interesting because that's what I would say about it. We have the least to say about this one. This was the biggest launch of any Assassin's Creed game in the first week.
No, it's because it was a PS5 launch title.
Game. I know, that's it. Exactly.
It was so intrinsically tied to the launch of the PS5. I think it was just similar for me with the Black Flag and the PS4. I think a lot of people just felt it was just a natural option for those that got the PS5 on launch.
Because I can understand a morbid curiosity to go, oh, has Assassin's Creed become something new?
Have they mixed it up, but they hadn't. No. They just made it even bigger.
Even bigger.
Why?
Who?
I just don't know.
I think we're alone. Honestly, I think we're alone in our opinion because people love these games. But when
I'm even struggling to think how kids have the time for this.
I know.
Who has the time?
My brother completed Odyssey. I don't know how he is got a child and is doing a nursing course. How did he have the time to play this game? I just don't know. I don't know how he had the patience to do it. Anyway, to each their own.
Oh, you could play 20 good, smaller games.
Yeah.
And have a much more varied...
Yep.
Your horizons have been opened in that space of time. Don't play Assassin's Creed games. Play all these other things in the same amount of time. Just don't do it. It's not worth it.
It's not.
It's now become generic gamia.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this
that is what these recent games are. It's like they're just weird kind of like copies of Western RPGs that are just so bloated with so much soulless content in them.
Yep.
Okay, right, yeah. Actually, still the settings and visuals are like really nice.
Yep.
And that's what pains me, because I'd love to go and get in amongst those worlds.
Well, I mean, and each of the three of these, they've released a free version where you can almost do it like a museum tour. There's
really?
no, yeah,
What?
No, not free versions of a mode in the game that you have purchased. Sorry, that like. It takes, there's no combat, you can just explore the world, but when you go up to like, a monument in Athens, like a text box comes up with like what that is in the real world and the history of it and how it was built and things like that. So, which is interesting.
Fair enough.
It's like a walk through a museum. So the care they put into the worlds are incredible. I'm not taking that away from them.
No.
But think about it. I mean, there's an interesting video. I can't remember exactly who, so I don't want to. Apologies for not crediting this YouTuber. But he does this video comparing Unity to Odyssey, and it's like walking through a market in Paris, and it's bursting with life, and then it's walking through a market in Athens, and there's like 4 people there. They've built this huge world that's pushing that console to its limits, but they can't fill it with any life.
I remember thinking that when playing Origins as well. Yeah. Just kind of it all feeling a bit odd and lifeless when you're in those areas, just like what? Oh, even the NPCs, they're just all a bit robotic and broken and weird. And
so just the main negative that I've got with all these games is the monetization aspect of it. We've spoken about it before, but the intentional design element to lock your story progression behind a drastic level increase that takes many hours of going through side missions or paying for an XP booster that allows you to play just the story. It's abhorrent. It really is.
It's really dastardly because these games are just they're wolves in sheep's clothing.
They've purposefully designed bloat to get you to pay for a microtransaction.
Unfortunately, so many people have been drawn in by the kind of coolness of, okay, we're doing the Viking thing, we're doing the Spartan thing, and it looks great, and you're going to want to get lost in these worlds, but actually that's just set dressing for
bland, showing
you what these games really are, which is soulless bloat. Okay, give us your money. And actually, they're really... I just don't find that... I really wanted to enjoy Origins. I really did. I wanted to give it a fair shot. Okay, it's something different.
First 10 hours or so, I was like, this is good. We were both enjoying the beginning of it. I remember, because I mind you found 2 copies of them in CEX like 3 days before it came out or something like that.
Is that what we did?
Yeah, and you were like, I found a copy here. And I was like, yeah, perfect. Let's just get me one, drop it off. And we were both playing at the same time, and we were like, this is really good. You're in that first opening area. I'm like, I'm liking this. Is cool. I'm liking this. And then
I knew it was
wait a
gonna.
minute, I'm still doing this. I'm doing the same thing. And then when Odyssey came out, now with Odyssey though, I think a main reason I didn't stick with it, A, was the blow, B, was that I knew. So, and I've said this in the podcast as well, but this is our definitive Assassin's Creed episode, so I'm going to say it here. When they were tricksy with Odyssey, because they got 20 hours out of me without having to touch a side mission.
Yeah.
Without, oh my goodness, I'm the next level for the next story mission. This is amazing. This is amazing. I'm not going to need to do that. Oh wait. Oh, I finished this and I now need to level up 8 levels. I had to do, I think it worked out at something like, if you were just doing side missions, I think it was something like 14 side missions or something to get to the next bit.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh, but we would have expected that you would have done some of that during your playthrough. I was like, no, because the design of them are so bad. I played 1 or 2 and went, okay, these are the same. There's also, sorry to be repetitive here, but there's like a TikTok that's like current Assassin's Creed design philosophy. It's like, I have 3 goats have gone missing. I want you to find them and bring them back. How far away are they? Not far enough away that you can fast travel there, but far enough away that it's going to be boring to get there. I'm like, perfect. They've purposefully designed it in such a way of that, you know what I mean?
And then you can just go and compare that to something like Ghost of Tsushima in terms of an open world game, and that's how you make it engaging to want 100%. To play through that story. Is everything in it?
Story is Golden Pathable, but also the way they design the side missions are their own stories.
Yeah.
And the characters that you're interacting with in the main story, yes, you can get a great main story, but if you do those side missions, you get to know those characters, because it's not side missions, it's side character missions. And you're working with the characters that come in and out of the story, so that when they turn up later in the story again, you're like, oh, I've been wondering what you've been up to since I helped you do that thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's perfectly designed for side content that it's completely optional, but very engaging. And I would recommend anyone who plays Ghost of Tsushima that they play the side missions, because they were great. They were really, really good.
I mean,
they just felt like more story missions.
Some people would chastise me for thinking I'd be so put off by a game I haven't even played. Well, both of them, the 2 recent ones, but Ghost of Tsushima was a rare recent example for me of an open world game where, I actually, well, for one, the main story was so good that I was like, well, I want to see this through. But along the way, I was wanting to do some of the side stuff because I want to make sure that I'm built up enough to be able to get through it and feel good about getting there. And that's what I did. And but I still left a lot on the table in terms of the side stuff, but that was fine because I enjoyed the time with what I had in that world. And I just feel like Odyssey and Valhalla are just the opposite.
Totally.
Because I just feel like I'm going to be so bored by so much of it, and just it'll all feel like a slog.
Yep.
And there's just so many little bits and pieces to that they want you to look at, Ubisofty things that I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. Is this something that I should be seeing? And just getting overwhelmed by all the little fucking icons and stuff. And but again, I've not played them, so I could be totally wrong. They could be really fun.
You're not.
Just, I get lost in those worlds, but I'm not willing to try, because I think I'm right.
I think you are right, because... no, you are.
Sorry, Alex, because he loves Odyssey. I don't know how.
My brother loved it as well, and I just didn't understand it. When Odyssey came out, though, it was 2 weeks before Red Dead Redemption 2, so I was like, whoop, you're going back to the shop, and I'm going to play Red Dead Redemption 2, and have a much better time of it. So, let's... We've been going for quite a while. This is 1 hour and 42 that we're at.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't even...
So, do you want to rank them? What do you think?
We're going to talk about the potential for whatever the next thing is, but...
I know.
I mean, we've touched on that.
We've touched on that. They're making a live service game next.
Probably.
Most likely.
We've kind of said earlier, like, what we would like it to be in terms of, like a modular thing that maybe you can go back and experience some of the old bits or some... No.
I'm not hopeful.
I'm not hopeful for what this is going to be. I think it's going to continue to be even more soulless, which is such a shame, because I would want Assassin's Creed as an entity to move in the opposite direction. Just be... focus much more on the elements and the vibe of what made Assassin's Creed, and de-bloat massively. But it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, because these games have sold more than any of the other Assassin's Creed games, unfortunately. So why would they? I don't blame them for not doing it. I just wish they would.
Hey, we could be wrong, but I'm not optimistic about the future at all.
So on that positive note, let's actually work our way from our least favourite to favourite. And we'll not do it one at a time. We'll just each present our list, and I'll go first, and then you can finish off. And then that'll be us. So I've got 11 slots here, because 2 of them technically I've not played, so I've just put them in. Ding. So,
and is Rogue one of those?
Yes.
Right,
Rogue and
okay,
Valhalla / spin-offs. We've not spoke about the PSP and the Vita games and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, number 10 of these games I have played is Odyssey. That's my least favourite.
Understandable.
Revelations. Is
Oh
number
God!
9.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
But again, this is I'm only just going by.
Even below Origins.
Yep. Origins is next though. Very, very close. It was hard to decide between the 2 of them. Then AC3. Mm-hmm. Then AC1 at number 6. Mm-hmm. And this is weird here, and these are very much, it depends what my mood is on the day. I've put Syndicate next and then Unity. Don't really know why. But ask me tomorrow, and I'd probably say it's the other way around.
Flip them, yeah.
So I don't really know. But they're next. Brotherhood, then AC2, and then Black Flag. Black Flag number 1, and then those first 2 Ezio games. That's peak AC for me. You could probably have told when we were talking about them anyway as well.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes at how almost ubiquitous it is. Because it's So for me. Odyssey, Valhalla, DNF. Not even can't even count them. Haven't played, and I'm actually going to put Rogue in with that because I feel like I feel nothing for that game, almost to the point that I feel like I haven't even played it.
Yeah, I get that.
And because it was so similar to Black Flag, I'm just kind of like, nah. To me, it doesn't count either. So if you want, okay, maybe it's in the last place. I guess. Mm-hmm. Don't know. Hard to say, but. Official last place for what I've played, Origins.
Yep.
Just couldn't get through it. Didn't finish it, but because I got so burnt out so quickly, so that wasn't good. After that, 3. Just
yep, that's fair.
Just really did not enjoy 3. Thought it was dull as dishwater. After that, Unity.
Yep.
Like I say, the city wasn't quite enough on its own to pull it up higher, but whatever. You
sound like you're like judging someone in Britain's Got Talent. Like, I'm sorry, but the city is just on its own is not enough. Just not.
It's just not enough. Stop saying please.
Stop saying please, son. Please, Lewis.
Roundabout in the middle point, or kind of the bottom half of things, still Revelations.
Yep.
Similar to Unity, but just somehow it was worked a little bit more for me still during that time. After that, Syndicate, we're starting to get into the good ones that I've actually...
Yeah.
This is the top half, I enjoy these games.
Yes.
I have enjoyed these games. In 4th place for me is the first one.
Cool.
I've just... nostalgia mainly, probably. I just think it just...
It's a powerful tool.
It being so influential, it's got to be high in my estimation. Number 3 is Brotherhood.
Okay.
Number 2 is 2. And again, they could be interchangeable and have been for me over the years, but probably just based on the premise of how much 2 did.
Yes, I think that's it.
As a game,
yep.
I've put that as...
Same. That's the exact same reason for me as well.
Yeah. And then, obviously, 1 Black Flag.
So we share the same top 3 then.
Yeah.
There we go.
Black Flag was just such a complete... Now, that was a melting pot of a game that just worked.
I don't know how it worked.
I don't know. It's such a weird one.
It's so strange because on paper it should not work. Like
so much fun.
For the reasons I've said that I don't like other Assassin's Creed games because they don't feel like Assassin's Creed. And then you say, oh, but you're a pirate and you're going to be doing naval combat and it's not stealthy, but it can be at some points. I'm like, oh, I don't want this. But then when you actually put it down in front of me, I'm like, this is incredible. This is so good.
It just felt like kind of such an ultimate culmination of what could have been or could be done with that series in terms of like mixing things up and adding in a mix of gameplay and locales and stuff that just made it such a good time. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what it did. So yeah, Black Flag.
Black Flag.
Pirates are cool and stuff.
The best Assassin's Creed game. Sorry, Richard. I know you hate that game. So
he hates it.
He hates it.
Why?
Because
how? What's his favourite? What does he like?
I think 2.
Right.
He can tell me that after he's listened to this episode. But he's teased me since I've known him that I've always said Black Flag's better. Because it's just definitively true. So, on that note of positivity, because we were getting quite like passioned and heated, we shall end on that there with this a nice little meaty and lengthy episode. But this is us. We've put Assassin's Creed to bed. We have spoken game by game
until the live service thing.
Of course. But we are caught up. We're feeling good. We don't need to be like we never need to say like, I think we should do an episode on Assassin's Creed because we talk about it. I mean, here we go. This is us.
Go to our system.
Thank you so much for, if you got this far, well done. If you got this far and you've never played Assassin's Creed, what? So yeah, I don't expect the numbers to be quite as strong on this one, but that's okay.
Well,
this is purely, you can tell this is very much for us here.
Catharsis.
So this is catharsis. I've enjoyed this episode though. I enjoyed researching it as well, kind of thinking back on the old games and stuff and going game by game. It kind of made me want to just touch some of them again and just see what they're like.
Those were the days.
But I'm probably not going to do that. So
no.
Let's stop there and let's go and eat some freshly baked cookies.
Let's do it.
That's genuinely what's happening.
Woo!
Right. Catch you soon. Bye.
Bye.